Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about SurrealEstate Season 3, Episode 8. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, obviously, this episode heavily revolves, the main crux of this episode revolves around dreams. There's this woman, Dorothy, who is haunting multiple people's dreams. She first shows up in Susan's, because when Susan had that dream about Tag, I initially thought, is this, survivor's guilt or feeling guilty about Tag? Because that was even something later on. Luke was like, he figured out what Augie and Lomax's dream meant in the grand scheme of things with Dorothy, but it seemed like he's like, I'm not fully sure what Susan's did. I don't think he ever fully connected, because I think it is more so like she didn't have an opportunity to really get across what I think she was trying to show them stuff, because like I said, the Lomax and August dreams showcase what she was really after and stuff like that. She kind of went about a creepy, horrifying way trying to get her message across. She strangled Susan, but Susan's dream seemed to be more like Tag was reaching out to her and Dorothy just happened to intersect it, and it wasn't it didn't have the messaging behind it like August and Lomax's, because their dreams too were by themselves, relatively speaking. Lomax and August. Susan's the only one that had another person in her dream, and that was Tag, because he was reaching out to her, because he's like, oh, that place you're supposed to show me. That's why I was like, oh, is it about guilt? And he's like, no, you know what home means to me, so I want to go. I want to go home. And it's kind of him, I think, moving on. And obviously, the key ended up being symbolic, because later on, Susan, I think that is the same house. So I think, like I said, I just think both dreams intersected at once. So I think that might have been the key to it, which is the literal key she had in her dream. But yeah, him walking over to a sign of oh yeah, Roman Island, Susan's kind of sold this house or whatever. So, but yeah, Lomax being on an autopsy table being sliced open, obviously feels befitting, considering whoa, her family, funeral home and everything. And then on top of that with August, it's yeah, he was around all his stuff. He even said oh yeah, it's a recurring dream he has, because he's usually when he has these type of dreams, he's it's I'm usually on the verge of a big idea or something like that. So it felt interesting. Like I said, they're intersecting in familiar territory for all the characters, including Susan, because she already had this guilt about Tag, and like I said, I think Tag was reaching out to her. So but yeah, going into it, it's interesting too, because the woman's name is Dorothy, and then it's this episode also involves bricks. Obviously, that's Susan's storyline, but then there's also gold, and I'm I put that together. I was the show is not doing that, but I'm connecting Dorothy, Wizard of Oz, the Yellow Brick Road. I'm connecting dots that aren't really there, but it just it immediately made me think of that, which I was oh, that's just interesting. Like I said, if the Susan, it's all in the same episode, but the Susan Brick storyline is not directly connected to the Dorothy and Gold of it. But I don't, like I said, I don't. It'd be funny if someone did write this or construct this with that in mind, just to be subliminally there. But it's probably just once again, it's just my idiotic brain connecting dots that aren't necessarily meant to be connected. Yeah, she was haunting everyone's dreams, and Luke is trying to figure out okay, what's going on here, because they end up digging in a spot August had in his dream, and they found gold bars, which she dug out gold coins in Lomax's stomach instead of organs and intestines. And so Luke ends up going and having a dream, but he's visited by a girl named Lydia. And so I was is she... That's why, because they found a picture, but Dorothy didn't have any family, so they're oh, could it be it's definitely, she didn't have a daughter. It's did she have a niece? It's no, she didn't. So it turns out that Lydia says that Dorothy was basically Lydia was oh, I remember a whole bunch of people taking photos of me and kind of spread it around there, and I didn't know initially I was is that supposed to be in a very disgusting way, but it's a no, we're putting your situation out there to spread awareness and kind of get money to build schools and stuff like that in in her home and where she lives. Because a big recurring thing was Dorothy had made a lot of money. She was a she was some kind of engineer. Was it like a software engineer? She was some kind of engineer, and they were like, yo, she's actually made a lot of money, but there's like nothing really here. It's very sparse, no photos, no nothing. And only thing she had a photo of was her and Lydia. And so it became a conversation of where's that money? And she converted it all into gold when Luke went to go talk to her. It's like, what do you want? And for her, it's like, she said like she really had no people in her life, no family, no friends. She kind of pretty much kept to herself. Hey, fellow keep to himself introvert, game recognizes game type of situation. But when she's like seeing that one photo of like Lydia, it really like, it's like we connected and that struck a chord for her. And so she wanted to do good. So she's like, I don't trust banks and stuff like that. So I decided to convert my money into gold and then bury it. But then over time, gold became more and more worthwhile. And so the amount that gold was worth ended up expediting. And she was just like, I was just waiting for the perfect day. And that, if that is not life in a nutshell, that life will sideswipe you out of nowhere. Because, and that's the thing, we're always waiting because we're like, oh, well, I want things to be just right. I want things to be perfect. I'm just waiting for that one day. And then you get sideswiped because she died in her sleep from like a cardiac arrest situation. But and that's what she's holding on to, and that's why she's so angry, because she's like, oh, I want my gold. But it's like, yeah, because she had plans, like, you know. And, you know, once again, the whole adage of man makes plan, God laughs. I'm probably butchering that, but it's along those lines. And, you know, because she could have sent the money earlier, but she saw like, no, the gold is being worth more and more. So the more the longer I wait on it, the more money can be sent there. And if I wait for the right time, it'll be at its peak, and they'll get the more bang for their buck, more bang for their gold, I guess, in this regard. So, and it's just really sad, you know, just because, you know, it's interesting too, because even Lomax had a whole point of that, which I thought was I had this weird thought when Lomax was there with Susan earlier in the episode. I was like, is Lomax? Is that not Lomax? Because I was like, the way she was talking seemed a little weird. But to be fair, like, Lomax in general is a little off. But yeah, she was talking, because I thought like I mean, I guess when your job involves what it is, I mean, for one, coming from the funeral home world that she does, but also just like they deal with spirits and the dead, so it's kind of like they're very casual with the death conversation, even though like they just lost Tag, but they had that heartwarming, you know, seeing her, August, Luke, and Susan, because obviously Susan's, you know, working through the pain, and Luke is like, hey, let's support Susan through all this, like, you know, because he was saying like, we don't have to work through you know, you guys don't have to work too, but August and Lomax are like, no, we want to. And so, but yeah, she was having this conversation about like dying in your sleep versus just like any other way, because she's like, we've seen like people who die like other ways, like at least that means you had unfinished business stuff to tie you here. Like dying in your sleep is kind of like, oh, that's kind of like So it's interesting. I guess for Lomax it's kind of like, I would rather not die that way, because I guess it's like if you just die in your sleep, like, but I mean, if there's strong enough emotions and ties, like August was saying, she's able to do what she's doing, and she's hopping in people's dreams and stuff like that. But yeah, they end up Luke promises to get the money to the right people so that what she wants, not only just to help out Lydia, but so many people like her, what was it, like her and the tens of thousands or like the hundreds of thousands of other kids that Dorothy wanted to help out. So, and it's like, right, you get to just finally rest, you know? So, like I said, we still haven't really gotten to that point, like that dude from a couple episodes back who was telling him like, yo, I'm here from the higher ups to be like, you don't have to basically move on everyone. Like sometimes you just have to listen. And like I said, I think sometimes he got caught up in a routine of thinking he knew exactly what people wanted. But it's like, right, I think it is still the thing of he is listening. So it's like, what do you want? I'm gonna do what you want, and allowing you to rest and move on. You don't have to kind of stay here, you know, unnecessarily type of situation. So that's where things kind of reside on that front. Let's go shift over to the Susan side of things, where obviously the losing Tag situation hurts, because it's like, right, after losing her mom too. And even it's sad too, because she's like, right, I feel like I'm letting everyone down. I'm letting my mom down. I let Tad down. She's like, that's what I do now. I let people down. It's like, oh, and Lomax kind of like hugging her and like leaning on her. I was like, you know, which I love the backdrop of just like that's happening, and then you just hearing the screaming and the bricks flying. I was like, that's such a crazy backdrop for such a sentimental scene. I mean, it kind of encapsulates this everything, especially like kind of the load that Susan was on. I did think it was interesting when Crash had showed up, and talked to her. I was like, well, he's like, oh, brought her flowers, and she's like, oh, how did you? He's like, yeah, a buddy of mine told me about like your coworker that died. I was like, interesting. I was like, but how the hell did you know where she was? I mean, I guess you could have called into the office. And once again, we still haven't gotten anyone as a receptionist. We still don't have a proper replacement for Zoe, which is so interesting that we've never like circled back to that since like episode 2, where like the previous temp like ended up like quitting, and we've never filled that spot since then. And now like Tag, who was filling in mainly for Phil, is now gone, sadly, too. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. But yeah, Susan is dealing with the brick situation, because I think I forgot to talk about that last episode, that he had looked into the brick situation for Susan, and then this episode the bricks start flying off the wall. And then, initially she's hearing all these moans and screams and psychotic laughter, and she finds out that these bricks were a part of a mental asylum, and it's just kind of like, oh, cool. So her and Lomax end up talking to Victor, which Victor's kind of very dismissive. He's like, oh yeah, like, these bricks look stable to me. And she's like, well, they weren't too long ago. And he's like, I'm sorry, but I think we should talk about, the shabby work. And she took offense to that. She was like, shabby? No, because obviously like her and Lomax put a lot of work into this place, and Lomax has been like, Susan, it's not worth it. He's not worth it. But yeah, like he was going to just because obviously the other people that Susan was worried about letting down is the people who are about to buy this place. And she's just like, right, we're not going to have enough time to replace the wall in time. Like they're going to be, trying to move in soon. And like, they're probably going to like turn this whole thing down. So, but then later on, Victor showed up and he was like, yo, I got visited by somebody who basically had some dirt on me and told me to kind of, talk to you and stuff. And she's like, who was the guy? And he's like, I didn't catch the name. It was like, oh, actually he gave me a business card, and it's Tag. It's like, right. Who knows if he's still around. I mean, he was around long enough to kind of visit Victor, but to be fair, it's like Luke has to like tune in. It's not an automatic thing, because like Dorothy, he didn't run into Dorothy until after the Lydia thing, because I think after that he made it like he kind of tunes his frequency of like pushing it to be like, and I know you're here, Dorothy, I'm gonna drag you out because you normally just come to dreams, but your energy's here, I know what to look for, I know what energy to tap into, so I adjust the frequency and I'm able to kind of see you now. So I guess like Tag could be in that similar situation. Because once again, that dream happened before the whole Victor conversation. So Tag's still looking out for her, because it turns out that the flowers that Crash had gotten her, he's heard a whisper, and it's like Tag was, looking out for her, because he cared for Susan and he wants her to be happy. He wants to help her out as best he can, even in his situation. So that's why I brought this up last episode. I was like, will we see Tag's ghost or not? Which we did in the beginning of the episode in a dream form, but I don't know if we'll actually see him or not. Because I was curious if Luke would run into him at Tag's place, but it might be like after he did what he did for Tag, he might move on now, because like the last thing is like, hey, I found my home and I'm okay to move on now. That might also be why we're not going to see him at all, or why we didn't see him at all in this episode. I don't know. I'm curious to see if they handle that way. Will that just be like, no, we will never see Tag again, or will it be a situation of maybe eventually Luke approaches him or something? So. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. Obviously, things are moving in a good direction for Susan. I think hearing that Tag had her back like that kind of made her feel good. And, she's guy was like, yo, we'll work on that wall. We'll replace it like in 72 hours. So things are kind of working out. Obviously, things between her and her and Crush. I'm already blank on his name. Sorry. Or Crash. God, I'm getting it wrong already, even though I literally said it like a couple minutes ago. Her and Crash are progressing, and he was there for her obviously when she was kind of at her low point, and it's just kind of like, oh, he reached out to her, made sure she was okay. He's like, I'm not going to tell you not to feel what you're feeling, but you don't have to feel it alone. So, good guy, Crash. Once again, I was super nervous about him, but yeah. Other than that, we had Luke investigating. He's like, right, there had to be a reason why, oh God, Tag ended up leaving his place, and he went there and found that piece of bread. At last episode, I'd wondered like, oh, did the piece of bread change the image from Tyler to that Susan tombstone? But looking at it, it's like, no, it's the same piece of bread. I wonder, is it a thing of just Tag never looked at the other side? But it probably is like a no, it eventually ingrained itself. Like I said, it changed, but the other side eventually had that happen. Once again, because the toaster was no longer around. That was like its last prophecy. But now he sees Tyler and Susan's thing, and he's just, because they were like, yeah, it's getting treated as like a random hit and run. But Luke has a sit down with Tyler at that spot he constantly goes to, and Tyler's being a complete and utter C word, and he's just being biggest dick possible when it comes to this whole Tag situation. I thought it was interesting because it's like, oh, a friend of mine died, and it was actually Tyler who kept referencing. He was like, oh, your employee, but it's like, I mean, someone can correct me. I don't think he ever referred to Tag as his employee. It was more of a thing of, he just said a friend of his died. You adding in the employee thing, I think, is important. He also brought up Susan, but it's like Tyler and Susan haven't had any interaction, but it's like, well, he did bring up Susan, so, but it's like, him bringing up what he did, and now with the bread and everything, like, Luke doesn't have any definitive proof, so he can't really act upon it. We're also not dealing with a spirit, we're dealing with a dude. Well, to his knowledge, we're just dealing with a dude, so. And Luke is just pissed at him, saying all the stuff that he's done. But like, for Tyler, it's like, people die every day. Like, who cares? Like, that guy's life didn't really matter. But it's like, nah, man, he was a kid. He was 24. He had his whole life in front of him. And it's like, oh, that's such a cliche thing, yada, 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 saying all this stuff. But he's like, oh, but people live. There was a golden opportunity we had, Luke, and you basically shat on it when I extended my hand. And Luke's kind of drowning in it. And Tyler's leaning in, kind of being like, oh, yeah, feeling it. But then, like, Luke snaps out of it and pulls away. And so for him, it's like, before his defense was like, I'm going to wear you down psychically or mentally or make you more vulnerable after drinking. But he's like, after talking to Seven, he's like, no, I think I know the way in. It's his grief. So he's going to use Luke's grief against him. So that probably means he's going to target the rest of Roman Ireland just to get at him, to like chip away at him more and more. It's like, that grief of yours is going to be my window into like hijacking your body. But obviously, Seven approaches Malik. Once again, I'm going to probably forget this character's name again because I kept just being like, oh yeah, the thing inside of Tyler. I could just always go by Elvis, even though that's not really its name. That was its name when it was, in the Toy Elephant. But they're saying, like, she's saying, like, you have even less time now, like, the consequences for you not getting this done. Because he even says it later on of, like, they want Luke for themselves. He has a personal vested interest in going after Luke. I'm sure they do, too, because of how special he is, which is so interesting. I guess because he has that very unique tie to the other world. Because I was about to say, like, you seem to have no one has any interest in Susan, even though, like, Susan's, like, one of the other few people of, like physical ability. She's pyrokinetic and telekinetic, but it seems like no one's targeting her because I guess she's not, like, that's cool on the human realm, but like what Luke can do is special in its own way. But it's like, yeah, I think it's so interesting that Susan never kind of garnishes the attention Luke got. I mean, I guess maybe their last conversation in one of the previous episodes, maybe Luke was that focal point of conversation, because I knew, like, Malik is, like, all about going after Luke for personal vendetta, but I don't know if, like, the others really cared, but the way he talks about it later on, it makes it seem like, no, they are actively after you, Luke, so. But either way, Luke ended up having a dream of his own at the end of the episode where, he's visited by Elvis. And I guess that's what Elvis did back in the day, and probably why Carl, like, separated them, was he was the devil on Luke's shoulder, being like, oh, do a little bad. Come on, we can do this. We can get into some trouble, some mischief. So it seems like that was kind of what his whole shtick was with Luke. And Luke was like, yeah, my dad says you're kind of bad for him. He's like, I don't listen to him. He's like, but basically, you're a mouse. I forgot the exact word he was saying, but basically you're a mouse and a whole bunch of snakes are gathering to swallow you whole. But he's like, let me take over your body, and you got to let me in, and I can make you a mongoose. Mongooses go after snakes. So it's like, yeah, I'm helping you in the food chain type of thing. Instead of you being prey, I can make you the predator in a situation. And it's just like, all you have to do is open up, to your old pal Elvis. But he specifically said, like, he said that line that Tyler said earlier in the episode about, like, and they had a previous conversation, like a scene or two earlier, and from the ending about like, oh, him apologizing, yada yada yada. I shouldn't have done that. But he's, once again, the point is he's twisting the knife deeper and deeper because he's trying to keep Luke on the hook while twisting the knife deeper and deeper just to like crack at that grief more. But it's not until like he says the exact line of like, oh, we all kind of have to go sometime or whatever, and then like Luke is like, holy shit, Elvis is Tyler. So he finally knows. So we got 2 episodes left. So it makes me wonder if Tyler or Malik is going to get inside of Luke by the end of next episode, and we kind of have to contend with that in the season finale. Or it could be a thing of you think you got rid of him, but then it's revealed, nah, he's possessed by the end of the season. We'll see how that shapes up and plays out. But I'm so curious to see what these next 2 episodes look like. I'm curious to see if Luke approaches the others about this, or does he kind of keep that to himself? Like, I'm sure we'll probably like, maybe we even get some flashbacks next episode about the Elvis thing, because like all we've had was Malik's perspective on the whole situation. So probably get some insight from Luke on the whole Elvis thing as he probably describes it, talks about it with everyone. And probably it's like, okay, it probably makes a little more sense why he's targeting Susan and why he got so close to Luke and why Tyler's like apparently a different person and stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see how they how that all plays out next episode going forward after that into the season finale. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.